What if your breakthrough year isn't waiting for January and starts the moment you understand what has been holding you back? This new year could be the one you finally stop drifting and start directing your life. Stay with me, because in the next minutes, you will discover a simple shift that turns goals from blurry wishes into actions that actually stick and change everything. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to move through life like they re-following a hidden map, while others wander from week to week, hoping momentum will magically show up? The truth is harsh but liberating. The people who get what they want aren't luckier, smarter, or born with discipline in their DNA. They simply do one thing most people ignore. They turn their goals into something visible, concrete, and unavoidable. And that's exactly where our journey begins. So let me ask you something simple. Do your goals live inside your head or on paper? Because that single decision determines whether your future stays a possibility or becomes a plan. Writing your goals isn't just motivational fluff. It changes the way your brain works. When you put a goal on paper, your mind treats it differently. It becomes a target, not a dream. And the moment you externalize that target, your chances of success rise dramatically. You stop hoping and start engineering. But here's the twist. Writing your goals once a year doesn't change anything. The real shift comes when you transform them into quarterly missions, compact, focused, and impossible to ignore. When you break the year into 3-month arcs, suddenly everything feels closer, more manageable, less intimidating. You're no longer saying, "This year I want to improve my finances," or "This year I want to study more." You're saying, "For the next 90 days, here's the exact mission I'm attacking." That's how clarity is built. That's how momentum is created. And that's how you walk into 2026 with direction instead of vague hopes. But writing your goals is only the first step. What truly transforms your mind is the frequency of contact you have with them. Imagine waking up each morning with a tiny ritual, a manifesto you read, or even rewrite that reminds your brain what actually matters. When your goals sit in front of you daily, your attention sharpens like a lens that finally snaps into focus. Distractions start losing their power, and your decisions become clearer, faster, and aligned with where you're going instead of where you've been. And at the end of each week, you revisit everything: what worked, what slipped, what needs adjusting. This weekly reset isn't about judgment. It's about alignment. It teaches your mind that your goals aren't seasonal hobbies. They're your operating system. So here is the question I want you to hold before we move on. If simply writing and reviewing your goals can create this level of clarity, what happens when you start measuring your progress with precision? Something almost magical. Your goals stop being abstract ideals and begin functioning like gauges on a dashboard. You can finally see what's moving, what's stalling, and what needs a sharper strategy. Tracking your progress isn't about micromanaging your life. It's about removing the guesswork. When you measure your study hours, your practice sessions, your workouts, or whatever mission you're on, you stop living in, "I think I'm doing okay," and start living in, "I know exactly where I stand." That level of clarity is incredibly freeing. It turns overwhelm into direction, and it turns discouragement into fuel. A simple color code: green for on track, yellow for slipping, red for off course, can tell your future self more truth than any motivational speech. When you see the pattern, you can adjust your actions instead of waiting for motivation to randomly strike. And something fascinating happens the moment you start measuring. Your brain becomes invested in the score. It wants to improve it, maintain it, protect it. Progress becomes a game, and you start playing to win. But measuring isn't enough. Truly powerful progress comes from anticipating the friction before it shows up. Instead of fantasizing about the perfect path, you begin mapping out the messy parts, the obstacles, the delays, the energy dips, the emotional storms. This is where the WHOOP method becomes a secret weapon. You identify your wish, imagine the outcome, acknowledge the obstacle, and plan your response in advance. It's not negative thinking, it's strategic thinking. Strong people don't get blindsided every week. They expect resistance and they prepare for it. Picture this. You want to study consistently, but you know that on certain evenings, your energy collapses. Instead of feeling guilty later, you predict it now and create a plan, maybe a shorter session, maybe earlier timing, maybe a reward system. Suddenly, the obstacle stops being a wall and becomes a familiar visitor you already know how to handle. When you combine progress tracking with obstacle planning, something shifts inside you. You stop being reactive and become intentional. You stop improvising and start designing. Your days feel lighter, but your actions become sharper. And that leads us to the most powerful part of the entire process. One that turns discipline from a battle into a baseline. So let me ask you, if measuring and preparing can already elevate your consistency, what happens when your goals become part of your identity itself? Let's unlock the final and most transformative strategy, shaping your identity. Because at the end of the day, you can write goals, monitor progress, and plan for obstacles, but if your identity stays the same, your habits will always snap back to the old baseline. Identity is the root system beneath your behavior. Change the root, and the tree grows differently. Think about how powerful it is when someone stops saying, "I'm trying to exercise more," and instead says, "I'm the kind of person who moves every day." The second version is not a goal. It's a self-definition. Identities are sticky. They don't evaporate when motivation dies. They create automatic behavior because your actions try to match who you believe you are. This is why shifting from "I want to study more" to "I'm a committed learner" feels subtle but hits your brain like a software update. Once identity changes, discipline becomes less about effort and more about consistency. And here's the beautiful part. You only need one identity to reshape an entire year. You don't need 20 new personalities. You need a single anchor identity that aligns with the version of yourself you are trying to build. Maybe for 2026 you choose, "I'm someone who finishes what I start," or "I'm a person who keeps promises to myself," or "I'm a builder, not a drifter." Whatever it is, let it be simple, strong, and easy to live out daily. When you combine identity with written goals, consistent reviews, honest tracking, and obstacle planning, you create something rare, a system that makes success predictable instead of accidental. You stop depending on willpower, which is fragile, and start depending on structure, which is reliable. And suddenly, 2026 doesn't feel like a distant hope. It feels like a direction you're intentionally walking toward. So if this video brought you clarity, courage, or even just a spark of momentum, I'd love to have you join this community. Hit that subscribe button so you don't walk this journey alone. We grow stronger together, and I'd be honored to help you step into the version of yourself you know you're meant to become.